Well, as we saw a little earlier, there are scenes of jubilation, but also security preparation in Israel as the American embassy prepares to open there in Jerusalem. It's a big deal, shifting from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, recognising very publicly, very openly that that is regarded by the United States as Israel's capital. Of course, the Palestinians are outraged by this. They say historically it's their capital. This risks a two-state solution. But it's something Donald Trump promised to do and then something he committed to do back in December. And his daughter, Ivanka Trump, her husband, Jared Kushner, are there to witness this opening today. I'm joined now by Labor MP Michael Danby, a prominent Jewish MP, for a look at this and some other issues as well. Thanks for your time this afternoon. Do you believe this is the right move?
Events are moving in their direction, David. West Jerusalem has always been Israel's capital. It doesn't preclude, as I believe President Trump's going to do some way down the track, the Americans suggesting that 4 suburbs of East Jerusalem form part of a Palestinian capital. But if the Palestinians keep on this track of not talking to the Americans, they're going to end up in this dead end. So Israel wins the Eurovision Song Contest, its economy's booming, and it's got American recognition of its West Jerusalem capital. So
is it therefore something Australia should be contemplating as well, do you think, this sort of shift in where our embassy is?
I wouldn't expect it of Malcolm Turnbull or Julie Bishop. They talk a big game when they are in front of the Australian Jewish community about how active they are and all of this kind of stuff. Our Foreign Minister hasn't said once in the last 18 months a single condemnation of Iranian ballistic missile tests. Mr Macron, Mrs Merkel, Mrs May have all said their opposition to this. So, you know, Australia is, has a two-track policy where the Foreign Minister and the Prime Minister beat their chest in front of parochial audiences here in Australia, but they won't turn up in Jerusalem. They're too weak.
But I'm just asking what you think. Do you think the Australian embassy should be moved to Jerusalem?
It's where the Israeli capital is, it's where the Knesset is, it's where all of the ministries are, provided it doesn't preclude further negotiations when the Palestinians come to their senses.
And that's the key. So what do you think? Do you think it would, or do you think we should be doing this? Australia should be doing this?
I think Trump is a deal maker, and he's giving this to the Israelis as an incentive. He's okayed, like Putin has, their hitbacks at the Iranian attacks on them and encroachments in Syria. And I think he will demand a price for this, and that is he's going to offer the Palestinians the same agreement that Presidents Clinton and Obama offered them and that they refused, and they'll see if they refuse him. I have to say it, he's a vulgar, indeed rude man, but he seems to make deals like in New York real estate with the North Koreans. Who knows what will happen after this?
Well, who knows? But just coming back to that question, just before we leave this issue, in your view, Michael Danby, should Australia shift its embassy to Jerusalem?
It's not a crucial issue for me. All things being equal, yes. But as long as it doesn't preclude involving Palestinians in further negotiations, it would be fine by me. I would support it.
All right, look, a few other things I just want to get your thoughts on. In particular, reports in the Financial Review today in relation to China. This is the US State Department secret report. The Fin Review suggests that it says 16 smaller regional neighbours, amongst them Malaysia, Laos, Cambodia and so on, have been saddled into a debt trap with China, unsustainable debts they'll never be able to repay. How concerned are you about this? How concerned do you think Australia should be about this?
Well, I saw Peter Khalil, the former National Security Advisor for the Labor Party, who's now the member for Wills, saying that he was very concerned, and I think he reflects opposition concern, which I know is shared by the government and the establishment in Canberra. Look, the Japanese during the Second World War had military aggression and what they called the Greater East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere. And I think that China is a lot more patient, a lot more commercial, and it's trying to get its way by economic power. So this economic lending to states from Africa through to the Pacific has a strategic purpose, though. And that's why here in Australia we were mistaken to sell the Port of Darwin to them, but very good that the Foreign Investment Review Board knocked back their bid for Ausgrid in New South Wales. We've got to maintain a balance on this, David. We should welcome all foreign investment in Australia provided it doesn't affect our strategic interests, but they're certainly going after leveraging their economic power in the South Pacific.
What do you think they're going to do with that? With these, you know, if those debts can't be called in, what do you think China will expect of these? Well, you know,
Vanuatu is in the nightmare position for Australia strategically of being halfway between us and the west coast of the United States. So maritime resupply from the United States is jeopardised if there's a Chinese naval base there with anti-ship missiles. Now,
of course, we're very far.
We're very far from that. But David, they've established a 350-metre long dock there in Vanuatu, and the Chinese Navy turned up on a goodwill visit there some time ago. So look, it's not going to happen now, and we should be measured and balanced about it, but both the government and the opposition are very mindful of this. Richard Marles, my good friend, is particularly interested in the South Pacific and has constantly told us we've got to be active with the Solomons, we've got to be active with Nauru, we've got to be active with Vanuatu and all of these smaller places to see that this economic power isn't leveraged into some kind of strategic disadvantage to our country. It was very alarming that in the Solomons they were trying to lay this Chinese submarine cable that would have come into Australia and then got into our communications. So the Australian government, quite rightly, has offered an alternative to the Solomons government about that.
Yeah, I think our taxpayers are going to fund it instead. Look, a final one, this Chinese company ZTE, it is actually shortlisted to build Telstra's new or next super fast broadband network, but there are concerns about this company, allegations that it's been illegally shipping goods to North Korea and Iran. Donald Trump, however, I think tweeted over the weekend he wants some of the restrictions on ZTE relaxed. Are you worried about this? Do you think there should be some intervention to stop this Chinese company being involved in the Telstra rollout?
Look, I think we should listen to the experts on this. I'm not sure of how bad they are. I think the intelligence people, the security people will advise the government and the opposition on this, and we should move forward in a non-partisan way on this. I'm very pleased that the Foreign Investment Review Board on the big issues of strategic investment is sort of making decisions on some investments that say no. And I think that's the right attitude to have, a balanced, colourblind attitude to overseas investment. We're a capital-poor country, we need it, but we don't need to have back doors established into our telecommunications by companies that have a second purpose. And a lot of these Beijing-based companies are effectively state-controlled.
Michael Danby, thanks for joining us today. Good to talk to you.
Pleasure, David.